good afternoon to all of you, depending on where you are. Thank you for joining us for today's presentation of Beyond Benchmarking, Setting Performance Goals in Portfolio Manager. As Rosemary noted, my name is Andrew Schulte, and I am with ICF. We are an organization contracted to provide support to EPA's Portfolio Manager, EPA's Energy Star program. And I personally have been supporting the Energy Star program for buildings since 2005. So spent a little while using Portfolio Manager. Hopefully I can impart some of that experience to you today. As we get started, I just want to go over a few of the high-level learning objectives for today's presentation. So our goal is to give you an overview of the goal and target setting functionality that exists in Portfolio Manager, and to kind of show you the key steps required to use this functionality. And in doing so, what we want you to come away from this training with is the ability to establish and track energy reduction goals for individual buildings and or across your entire portfolio of buildings in Portfolio Manager. And we also want to show you how you can track your progress toward your goals using Portfolio Manager's reporting functionality. So with that, let's jump in. Just as a table setting contextual slide here, let's talk quickly about why are we worried about setting goals, tracking improvements, etc. Well, first things first, and you may have heard this in other trainings, benchmarking in Portfolio Manager is only a starting point. It's not the end goal. It's the idea is that you get your building or buildings benchmarked in Portfolio Manager, and then you use the information provided by Portfolio Manager to decide on your next steps. That could be prioritizing resources, prioritizing which buildings are going to get attention first, how you're going to sequence certain projects that you have in mind for improving energy performance, whether those projects are going to be low cost, no cost operations and maintenance versus more in-depth capital expenditures. All of these things, those are decisions you can make based on the information you get from benchmarking. Then, once your projects go into place, you have the ability to monitor performance as they're ongoing. You can see how your metrics in Portfolio Manager are changing month over month and year over year, hopefully in the intended direction. And then when a project has been completed, or some sort of initiative has been completed, the act of having set goals and tracking your performance towards them allows you to validate your results and then communicate those with others, whether that's internally within your organization or whether that's more publicly in the context of applying for Energy Star recognition or some other outward-facing promotion of your energy management successes. And why is Portfolio Manager such a great tool to use for goal setting and tracking your progress towards goals? Well, it's because the tool is not only a metrics calculator, but also a management tool that can benefit organizations. So as many of you probably know, Portfolio Manager is a great place to keep all your information in one place. Not just about one building, but about multiple buildings or properties. Also, in addition to energy, you can also track and set goals for performance related to your water consumption and waste disposal. As we'll discuss today, you can actually go ahead and identify goals in Portfolio Manager, which are aggressive and yet realistic. You can share information with others through functionality within Portfolio Manager. So whether those are people within your organization or folks outside your organization, like service providers that you contracted, it is easy within Portfolio Manager to share your property record or records as well as the goals that you set for those properties. And then, of course, in addition to energy, water, and waste, consumption, disposal, you can also track, the cost of your consumption. You can track environmental benefits like greenhouse gas emissions reductions. And then, as we'll discuss a little bit at the end of today's training, there are a huge number of metrics that you can customize into your own reporting templates to help you measure your progress against your goals, and also share that information throughout your organization as needed. All right, so we're going to jump into this first learning objective, which is establishing building performance goals in Portfolio Manager. And most of this is going to be a demonstration. I'm going to go live on the web and walk you through these various processes that I'm talking about. Before we get started, I did want to note, if you're brand new to using Portfolio Manager, if you've never seen Portfolio Manager before this training today, we're not going to go through every aspect of the tool. Great training for you would be the Portfolio Manager 101 training, which I believe has already been offered for February, but we present it monthly, and you can also always go to the WebEx Energy Star Buildings WebEx page to view a recording of the most recent offering. On our Energy Star trainings page, we also have a lot of documentation, including a Portfolio Manager quick start guide. So again, today we're assuming some basic familiarity with Portfolio Manager, but there are a lot of other resources if you need a little bit deeper context or need to understand the tool more fully. All right, with that, let me go ahead and switch views. I'm going to go ahead and share my web browser, so just give me a moment to switch over. All right, so we should now be seeing my web browser with my Portfolio Manager main page up. Rosemary, can you just confirm that you were seeing this on your end?
Yes, I can see that on my end. And it
Great.
looks clear. Yep.
Super. Thank you so much. All right. Well, for those of you who are familiar with Portfolio Manager, when you first log into the tool, this is the screen you will see. Obviously, the number of buildings that you have here in the main window will depend on how many properties you have set up. If you're just setting up an account for the first time, this will be blank. But the My Portfolio tab is kind of your home base. It's the point from which you can select any individual building to dive into it further, which we'll do in just a little while. And it's also the place where you can select account level actions that you want to take, like reporting. And again, we'll look at that in just a few minutes. But one thing I wanted to note here is if you scroll down the left side of your screen, you'll see that there's this box, and it's called Manage Portfolio. And these are a number of functionalities that you can engage to manipulate or make changes to multiple buildings at once. So these are sort of account level activities, and that's why it's on the My Portfolio page. One of the things that I wanted to show you is this fourth item right here. So you'll see that 4 items down, this little target with an arrow in it, you have the ability to set a portfolio baseline or target to help you measure progress. So when we click on this, because we've clicked on this at the highest level of the tool, the My Portfolio page, you have the ability to use this functionality to set baselines and targets for all properties. Okay, so any change you make here, any baselines or targets you set here will be applied across the board to all properties in your Portfolio Manager account. There is, of course, an opportunity to apply these baselines and targets on a property by property basis, and we'll look at that in just a minute. But first, we're going to go and look at the doing this at the level of the entire account. So let's talk through what your options are here. The first thing that you can do is set a baseline. And you'll see that it is possible for you to set a baseline for 3 different categories. You can set a baseline for your energy use, for your water use, and for your waste disposal or diversion. For each of these media, if you will, you have the opportunity to make 3 selections. So you can select a specific baseline year designated as a 12-month period ending with a given month and year. So for instance, if I wanted to set my baseline year as calendar year 2018, I would choose the baseline year ending December 31st, 2018. Okay, and that is pretty consistent throughout Portfolio Manager. Anytime Portfolio Manager is generating a metric, calculating a score, setting a baseline, establishing a target, it does it in terms of 12-month increments. So whenever you're choosing a metric or a target or a baseline like this, you are telling Portfolio Manager the 12-month period ending date. So for any of these baselines, you have the ability to select a specific baseline year. And then what this would do here is this would apply a baseline year of December 31st, 2018, or calendar year 2018, to every property in my account. Now, some of those properties might not have data going back that far. And so the tool wouldn't be able to calculate a baseline for them. But for any property that has data going back that far, this baseline would be set. The other alternative, and this is probably most useful, I believe this is also the default functionality of Portfolio Manager. When you first create a building record at Portfolio Manager, if you let Portfolio Manager automatically set your baselines, what it's going to do is it is going to look at each individual property. And for that property, it's going to look back and it's going to say, what is the first 12-month period for which this building has complete data and for which metrics can be calculated? That will be, by default, your baseline when you create a building. So if you were to select this option, let Portfolio Manager automatically set my baselines, then what it would be doing would be looking at every property in your Portfolio Manager account and setting that property's particular baseline based on the oldest 12 months of data it has available. Okay. The third option, of course, for any of these baselines is just to say, don't do anything with these baselines. So if you have set property by property baselines and you don't want to overwrite those, you'd select that option. So for instance, if you're going in and you're choosing to reset the energy baseline for all your properties automatically, but you don't want it to touch water or waste, you would want to keep that this third option specified. You know, leave it alone, don't touch it. That third option defaults to whatever property-specific baselines have been set for your individual properties. All right, so those are the options for setting baselines. Again, there are 3 options for how Portfolio Manager can set a baseline, and there are 3 categories for which baselines can be calculated: energy, water, and waste. And like I said, the system default for any building is to have the baseline be the earliest 12-month period for which complete data are available. All right, so a baseline is just one piece of the puzzle. Oh, and I should note also, sometimes a baseline will be valuable because you want to just go back as far as possible and say, how was my building performing back in 2015, right? But in other cases, you might want to set a baseline as, you know, the last 12-month period before a major energy retrofit went into effect, right? So let's say you're doing a major system upgrade, a building-wide lighting retrofit, right? And it is scheduled to be completed on June 30th. You know, let's say it was scheduled to be completed on June 30th, 2020. So in that case, you might want to select your baseline year as June 30th, 2020, right? Because that is the last 12-month period before your new and more efficient lighting kind of came online. So if you're doing a major retrofit project and you want to set sort of you want to be able to get a before and after view, that's one reason why you might choose a specific baseline year that is more recent than the oldest possible data. All right, so once you've set a baseline, you can also come in here and set an energy target, okay? So these are actually two separate things. It is possible for you not to set any baselines, but to set a target. The target basically allows you to say, where do I want to get? And again, from the screen we're on right now, we are on the option to set baselines and targets for all properties. So whatever you do here will apply to all properties in your portfolio. So your choices are, don't do anything to my targets, leave them be. I've already set them at the property level. I don't want to mess with them. Or you can set one of three target types. So you can set a target Energy Star score. So for instance, if you want the target for every building in your portfolio to be a 75, or the minimum score needed for Energy Star certification, you'd select a target Energy Star score of 75. If, on the other hand, you wanted to do a more relative target, you could choose a target percent better than metric. So you could set your target as either percent better than your baseline source EUI or energy use intensity, and in that case, it would refer directly to the baselines that you've set already. Or you could say, I want this building to be a specified target percentage better than median performance. Okay, so those are the target setting options. I'm not going to set them here. I'm actually going to show you how to set them at the level of the individual building. But as I noted earlier, from this page, anything you specify on this page, when you click Save Baselines and Target, it's going to apply that across the board to all buildings in your Portfolio Manager account. All right, so I'm going to cancel out of that. And now that we have talked about how to set baselines and targets across your Portfolio Manager, let's talk about how you would do it for a specific property. So we're going to come back to the My Portfolio page, and we're going to come on down here, and we're going to click on this sample property. All right. And this is the drill down level where we can see specific performance for this property. This is also the place where we would update any building operational details, where we would add new meter consumption data to the meters that we've set up, and so forth and so on. But you'll see that along these lines of kind of sub-tabs here for this building, one of them is the Goals tab. So we're going to go ahead and click on that. And the Goals tab is the place from which you will identify any property-specific baselines and targets that you want to set. So up at the top of this page, you actually have a metrics comparison. This is a summary report. This will actually make the most sense after we go in and we play around with our targets a little bit. You'll see that you can generate and download a number of performance documents from this page, which you can also do from the reporting tab, and we'll show you that later. Scrolling down here, you'll also see that this is where you can set baselines and targets. Okay, and so the default view here is going to be a quick table that tells you exactly what your baselines are for each of these three categories: energy, water, and waste. And then it's going to indicate what kind of target you have set. So if you want to go in and change that, edit it, you know, any tweak you want to make, you would click on this button that says Set Baselines or Target. All right. Now this is going to bring you to a page that is very similar to what I just discussed a few minutes ago. The only difference, so functionally it's all going to work the same in terms of how baselines are defined and how energy targets are defined. The only difference is that this this act of setting a baseline and target applies only to the specific property as opposed to the portfolio as a whole. So let's go in here. We can show here that, once again, you have the option to set energy, water, and waste baselines. One thing I want to note here is if you are not tracking consumption, or in this case, disposal, for a given medium, in this case, waste, then you won't be able to set a baseline. So you'll see that the tool automatically tells me, hey, you don't have any waste or material meters set up. It doesn't appear like you're tracking waste, so you can't set a baseline. If I created a waste meter and began tracking waste for this building, then I would have the option to set a baseline. But looking here at energy and water, you'll see that by default, I have had the tool automatically set my baseline. And from this grayed out text here, what you can see is it has automatically set my baseline to the first 12-month period for which I have complete data. If you were to go back into this building's meter data, you would see that the first annual period for which it has complete data is calendar year 2017. Therefore, by default, the baseline for both water and energy is 12/31/17. So that is basically as far back as I could possibly go. You'll see I can't go any earlier than that. However, if I wanted to select a specific baseline for my building that was more recent, I would just select it from this drop-down list. So again, let's say I wanted to know performance before and after, a major filler plant retrofit went into place. And let's say that happened at the end of third quarter 2020. Well, I could go ahead and I could set my energy baseline as September 30th, 2020. In this case, let's say I'm just going to select a baseline for energy, and I'm going to let Portfolio Manager define my baseline for water. Then as you scroll down, you will have the ability to set targets for energy consumption. Now, one thing I'll note here, you can set a baseline for energy, water, and waste, but you can only set a target for energy. All right, so as we discussed earlier at the portfolio level, there are three options here for setting a target. You can choose a target Energy Star score. You can choose a target percent better than baseline EUI, or you can choose a target percent better than median. And what median means for buildings is going to depend on what kind of property you are. If you are a property that is eligible to earn the 1 to 100 Energy Star score, then median performance is going to be determined, or is going to be defined as the performance level at which your building receives a score of 50. If your building is not eligible to receive a 1 to 100 Energy Star score, the median score is going to be based on a list of national median performance levels that EPA gathers and maintains from CBEX, the Commercial Building Energy Consumption Survey. So in this case, let's say I want to do target percent better than baseline source EUI. So I want to set my target based on my baseline, and I want to be 30% better than my baseline. So you'll say save and calculate. And what you'll see here is this summary table. Okay, and on the summary table, you will see a number of different columns. So you will see your baseline year. You will see your current year. So your baseline is whatever baseline you've just set above. So in this case, you'll remember that I manually set my baseline to September 2020. You'll see a column for your current performance. Current in Portfolio Manager is defined as the most recent 12-month period for which you have complete data. So for this sample building, my current period is the end of December 2021. So those are sort of baseline and current performance levels defined by your Energy Star score, the accompanying source EUI, site EUI, energy cost if you're tracking it, as well as greenhouse gas emissions. Okay. You'll also see that this table contains a target. So in this case, I have defined my target as 30% better than baseline source EUI. So 30% better than 135.7 is 95. Okay, so what this is doing is this is setting my target performance to a source EUI of 95 kBTU per square foot, and then it's telling me what that would translate to in terms of an ENERGY STAR score, as well as greenhouse gas emissions, right? So if I achieved my target of 30% better than baseline source EUI, I'd be scoring an 86 for this property. And again, as a point of reference, it's going to provide you this fourth column that shows the median property performance, or in the case of this building, how I would be performing if I was scoring a 50. So you can see how this changes. So let's say we change our baseline. So let Portfolio Manager automatically set my baseline. And we'll see that that reverts my baseline back to 2017. Let's say I want to set my energy target as a target ENERGY STAR score. Let's say I want my score to be a 75. All right, I can click Save and Calculate. And again, it shows me here's my baseline, here's my current performance, here is the performance associated with a score of 75, which we know is the minimum level required to earn ENERGY STAR certification. And you can see all the corresponding metrics that go along with that, including, what is the source and site energy use intensity that would be required to hit a target of 75, as well as what would my total building greenhouse gas emissions look like if I hit a score of 75. So when you're done with that, you can save baselines and target, and it will bring you back to your Goals tab. And again, it will show you, it will update this table up here based on the baseline and target setting that you just did on the prior page. So again, anytime you come down here and you make a change to baselines or target, it will display up here in your summary table. All right, so we've now gone through how to actually choose a target in a performance target in Portfolio Manager, both doing it at the portfolio level where you apply one target for all buildings, or doing it at a building by building level where you can be a little bit more specific. Now, Portfolio Manager in and of itself is not going to tell you what target is the right target for your building, okay? But it is intended to help you set a target that is going to be realistic and achievable while aggressive. So what do I mean by that? Well, let's say your current building score was a 25, okay? Is it realistic that your building is going to get to a 75? I mean, it could, but that would be a lot of movement. That would be a lot of energy performance improvement, and it might take a while. And in some cases, it might not ever be achievable, depending on, the configuration of your building. So, in setting a target, you definitely want to look at something that's ambitious but achievable. So, if you're scoring below a 50, right? Let's say you're scoring a 30 or a 40, you might want to consider, okay, is my target a 75, or do I want to have an interim target of a 50 or a 60? Again, in terms of communicating up the chain, setting expectations, getting resources to accomplish your ends, you do want to think carefully about not just setting the same goal for every building, knowing that, in some cases, some buildings may be capable of saving more than others. So you may want to take that into account when deciding how to apply or how to set your targets. All right, so we've talked about setting targets. Now, how do we track performance towards those targets? Well, the best place to go here is to go to this main level reporting tab. And if you've attended Portfolio Manager 101, 201, or 301, you're probably familiar with much of the functionality here. But a few things that I wanted to show you in the context of setting targets and measuring progress towards those targets. So the first thing up here on the reporting tab that I'd like to draw your attention to are these Energy Star performance documents. In particular, there's this report called the Progress and Goals Report. If you click on this, you'll see that the Progress and Goals Report is automatically selected, though of course there are other reports that you can generate at the same time. You'll be asked to come in here and select a property. I'm going to go ahead and select the sample property I've been using. You can determine the time frame for the report, so whether you want it to be your baseline year, the current year, or a single year of your choosing. And you can determine whether you want to run this report for energy, water, or waste. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to run this report for the current year for energy. All right, so we click this. That's going to bring up a new tab with your report. And surprise, surprise, you should be seeing the same numbers here that we just saw on the Goals tab of this building's Portfolio Manager page. But I wanted to show you how this is laid out in a nice organized report functionality. What's interesting here that I think is really useful is in this performance comparison, they set out your goals, right? And they separate goals from progress. So in the progress section, you can see your baseline period, right, which for this building was December 2017. You can see your current period ending date, which for this building was December 31st, 2021. And it will calculate for you the percentage changed. So between your baseline and today, how have you improved? So we can see here that my site energy use intensity actually went up slightly, but source energy use intensity, energy cost intensity, and greenhouse gas emissions has gone down slightly. Okay, so all right, well, what does that mean? Well, let's compare those numbers against our performance goals. So these are some different numbers that you can compare against. So you will always, in this chart, you will always be presented with the national median score and the Energy Star score of 75. So you'll always be able to compare your current progress against how your building would be performing at a score of 50 or at a score of 75. It will also show your property's target. Now, in this case, I've selected my target as 75, so these two columns are duplicative of one another. But if you had made any other selection, that would show here in your in the property target column. Okay, so this is a really nice report. Again, you can't quickly run this report for every property all at once. You would do this on a property by property basis. Okay, so that raises the question, what happens if you want to generate a portfolio-wide report to see at a glance how a portfolio of buildings are performing against their baselines and targets? All right, well, that's when we would use the reporting functionality. And to do that, we scroll down a little bit further on this page. And there are a lot of canned or default reports in Portfolio Manager that you may already be using that are really helpful. But you always have the option to create your own reporting template. And that's where you can choose up to 50 of more than, I think, 1,200 different metrics that can be generated out of Portfolio Manager. So perhaps you want to set up a reporting template that's geared towards baseline, current, and target performance. Well, you could come here and you could create a new template. And let's just call it goals. And let's say that we're going to select a time frame, and we're going to say we want this report to show for each building a current year and a baseline year for energy. And then you can select which properties. Well, you know what? I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to select all my properties and apply that selection. So I've got 34 properties. So this report is going to return 68 lines. So for each of the 34 properties, it's going to return a line for the current year and for the baseline year, where the baseline year has been defined for each individual building. Finally, this is where I select the information and metrics that I want in my template. Now, as I noted, there are, I think it used to say how many total metrics there were here, but it's a lot. It's definitely over 1,000. So you can choose which ones you want to have included in your report. One thing that I want to call your attention to is there is a category of metric down here called target metrics. So, for instance, you can see target Energy Star score, target percent better than median, target site energy use, target source energy use, target greenhouse gas emissions, target energy cost. If any of those are relevant to you, you can go ahead and you can choose these all and add them to your report template. Okay, so you've set your target. Let's say you want to have some comparisons. So you could do it for site and source energy use, site and source EUI. If you wanted to go ahead and look at your greenhouse gas emissions, you could select these as well. And when you're done, you'll have the option to see all of the fields that you've selected. And if you want to reorder them, you can drag and drop them around. And when you're done, you click Apply Selection. And then you'll come back and you'll save your template. Now, I have already done this in advance of this training, so I'm going to cancel out of here. When you save a custom template, it's going to be available to you down here in the tabbed table of Energy Star reports, specifically in the section called My Reports and Templates. And in here, any custom template that you've created will be available. And you can come down here. I called my template targets and goals. And you'll be able to take a number of actions here. You can view the current report. You can download it in Excel for further manipulation. You can edit the template. You can share the template with others. You can generate a new report. So let's say you add a building to your portfolio manager account. You'll want to update the report template to include that building. I'll just show you quickly what the report looks like. So what I did in this sample report is I set something up where for each property, I am comparing current performance against target performance for each of the categories. And you can see that I have a bunch of junk data in here, so there are a lot of buildings where data are not showing. But in general, you can see that for this property on line 2, I can see my Energy Star score currently next to my target Energy Star score. I can see my site energy use next to my target site energy use, and so on and so forth. See my current cost next to my target cost, my current GHG emissions next to my total GHG emissions. So again, this is just how I set it up very quickly. But the point here is that once you set baselines and targets, you can use the Portfolio Manager reporting functionality to define a customized report that will allow you to keep track of how your properties are performing on their way to meeting the goals and targets that you have set. All right, so I am going to stop sharing, and I am going to go ahead to, you can see that I've actually, on the slides that I'm showing on my screen, you will get a copy of these later, and it contains static screenshots of all the content that we just went through live. So at a later date, you will be able to either view a recording of this training, or you'll receive, probably by the end of today or beginning of tomorrow, a set of slides that will contain screenshots covering everything we talked through today. All right, so as we wrap this up and before we head into Q&A, I did want to talk about what we covered. We talked about how to set baselines and target information in Portfolio Manager using existing functionality. And then we also talked about how to use the reporting functionality in Portfolio Manager to track your progress against those goals. Now, I did want to take just a minute to talk through a few, what I call caveats about target setting in Portfolio Manager. There are a few current limitations in terms of the functionality of goal and target setting in the Portfolio Manager tool. And these might be most relevant to those of you whose buildings are either currently subject or expected in the future to be subject to building performance standards. For those of you who aren't familiar with building performance standards, these are policies that move beyond benchmarking and disclosure ordinances, and they actually set specific performance levels that building owners must meet. And those performance levels can be defined in terms of energy consumption or in terms of greenhouse gas emissions. The choice of how to set those standards is, it depends on the implementing jurisdiction. But the point is, if and where these standards exist, these become targets that building owners must meet. And so we recognize that when we talk about goal setting and target setting, if you are subject to one of these standards, that is very definitely going to dictate the relevant, or at least a relevant goal for your property. So a few things that I wanted to note that you may have seen as we went through the goal setting functionality. So first things first, it's not currently possible to specify a date by which you intend or are required to meet a goal or target. That's just currently not in Portfolio Manager. It's certainly something that EPA is aware of and may consider for future enhancements. But at this time, you cannot specify a date, a target date, along with a performance target. The other thing I wanted to note is, when Portfolio Manager calculates those metrics, when it goes in and says, okay, you've set your target as a 75, and so to get a 75, you need a source EUI of X. And those numbers are, very much defined by the building as you've set it up in Portfolio Manager today. So for instance, in Portfolio Manager, if you are accounting for all of your energy and you're 70% electric and 30% gas, when Portfolio Manager calculates what it's going to take to get you to a score of 75, it's basically presuming that you will maintain the same fuel mix at the property. If you want to start exploring the impact that different fuel mixes would have on your score or your site EUI or your greenhouse gas emissions, that is something at present that you can do via the Target Finder functionality. Target Finder is intended primarily for new design projects, but it can also be used as sort of a scenario testing tool. The other thing that I wanted to note is, you saw when we were working through targets, once you assign a target, Portfolio Manager is going to tell you the total greenhouse gas emissions associated with that target level of performance. And that can be a really useful value, but I wanted to make everybody aware of some of the limitations on what that means currently in Portfolio Manager. So at present, when Portfolio Manager is calculating your greenhouse gas emissions, it's doing so using what would be referred to in the greenhouse gas inventory world as a location-based approach to greenhouse gas emissions. It is using sub-regional emissions factors for electricity and national default emissions factors for all other fuels. So what does this mean? Well, Portfolio Manager does not currently allow you to specify custom emissions factors. So, based on the location of your building, which is going to be dictated by postal code, that tells Portfolio Manager where your building is located and therefore what emissions rate to apply. We recognize that some people may be interested in setting different emissions factors, either because you are contracted to purchase energy from a lower emissions provider and you have documentation showing this, or maybe you're in a city with a building performance standard and they have told you what emissions factor you're required to use. Right now in Portfolio Manager, you cannot account for that level of nuance, right? Portfolio manager is going to take your zip code. It's going to use that emissions factor for electricity. It's going to use a national emissions factor for other fuel types. And that's what it's going to use to generate your total greenhouse gas emissions. I did want to note that with regard to greenhouse gas emissions calculations, there will be additional functionality forthcoming with the EPA building emissions calculator, which is expected to kind of soft launch later in February. This tool is going to be located outside of Portfolio Manager, but it will include the ability to ingest data directly from Portfolio Manager, so you don't need to re-enter anything. And among its key core functionalities, it will allow users to calculate greenhouse gas emissions metrics in some more detailed ways compared to what can currently be done in Portfolio Manager. So it will allow you to enter custom emissions factors or to use emissions factors that have been mandated by local jurisdictions. It will be able to perform what are called market-based emissions calculations in addition to the the default location-based approach that Portfolio Manager currently uses. And there will also be a functionality in the tool that allows you to project future emissions based on a variety of assumptions, a few of which include expected fuel mix, so changing split of electric versus gas, as well as anticipated use of on-site or off-site renewables. So again, just wanted to be realistic in terms of pointing out, currently how Portfolio Manager calculates certain metrics and how this impacts, what you can get out of its goal-setting functionality. Also want to make you aware of new functionality that is forthcoming in the form of this building emissions calculator. And just also wanted to note that EPA is closely monitoring the growth of policy drivers like building performance standards across the country, understands that this growing trend may generate new needs for reporting and goal setting, and EPA will be keeping an eye on these and considering, how these might fit into future enhancement cycles for Portfolio Manager. All right, so with that, I do want to tie up our session today. We do have, understanding that, the session is all about not just setting a goal, but then going out and working towards that. We do have kind of an appendix to today's presentation that touches on resources made available by Energy Star to help building owners, managers, service providers pursue building improvements. And also wanted to note some additional resources for help related to Portfolio Manager and really all things Energy Star. We always encourage you to use our buildings help desk to send in any questions and also to review any existing FAQs that may help you out. So again, all of these links will be available to you in the slides that you'll receive following the session. For the moment, though, I do want to go ahead and I want to get us to the Q&A